All right, this is Chapter 1, Lesson 6, the distributive property. So I want to go ahead and look at two different methods to use the distributive property. The first is using the baby method, and the second is using the mouse method. So the first method I want to look at is using baby. So basically the idea is I'm taking B and I'm distributing it to everything that's inside the parentheses. So the B gets distributed to the A and to the Y. So I multiply B times A plus B times Y. So if I use 4 times 36, I can change 36 into 30 plus 6. Then I can use the distributive property to multiply to make it easier. 4 times 30 gives me 120, and 4 times 6 gives me 24. So when I add them together, I get 144. I could also multiply 4 times 36 and get 144 as well, but this makes it a little bit easier and breaks it down for you. The second way I can do it is using the mouse ears. So basically the idea behind this is I take the number and I break it down. Then I multiply the other number by each of the ears. So if I were looking at the number 3 times 8, I want to go ahead and break 8 down into 4 plus 4. It doesn't have to be 4 plus 4, it could be 2 plus 6, or whatever you wanted to make it to 8. So then I can rewrite the expression using the distributive property. 3 times 4, which is in my first set of mouse ears, plus 3 times 4, which is in my second mouse ear. Well, 12 plus 12 is 24, because 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 8 also gives me 24. So my steps are change one number with mouse ears. The ears add up to the face number. Step 3, multiply the other factors by each ear number. And then 4, add the products together. So this means that 3 times 8 equals 24. Now let's go ahead and look at a couple of examples. So the first example I have is use the distributive property to rewrite 2 times x plus 3. So what I want to do is I want to take 2, this 2, and I want to distribute it to everything that's inside the parentheses. So I want to take 2 times x and then 2 times 3, just like I did with baby. So 2 times x gives me 2x, and 2 times 3 gives me 6. Okay. Now go ahead and let's look at find 9 times 4 and 1/3 mentally using the distributive property. So for this one, I want to use the mouse ears. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my mouse. Okay, so here's my mouse. My face number is 4 1/3. Okay. In my ear, I'm going to write 4 and 1/3. So 4 is in my one ear and 1/3 is in my other ear. So I'm going to take the number 9, which is the number I didn't break down, and multiply it by each one of my ears. 9 times 4 gives me 36, and 9 times 1/3 gives me 3 when I simplify. 36 plus 3 is 39. When numeric or algebraic expressions are written as a product of their factors, the process is called blank, blank, blank. In those 3 blanks, you want to write the following. Numeric or algebraic expressions are written as a product of their factors. The process is called factoring the expression. Okay? So when I'm looking at stuff like this, I want to factor out the GCF out of an expression. So if I have 4x plus 8, the GCF is the greatest common factor. It's the biggest number that I can take out of everything that's inside my parentheses. So in this case of 4x plus 8, the biggest number that I can take out of 4x and 8 is 4. Okay, you can see this by writing the prime factorization of 4x and 8. 4x is 2 times 2 times x. 8 equals 2 times 2 times 2. So I have a 2 in common, so 2 times 2 equals 4, so that is my GCF. So that's what comes out. Then I'm left with x, and I'm left with 2. So 4 times the quantity x plus 2 when I factor it out. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of examples. The first example I want to look at is factor 12 plus 8. So I want to go ahead and figure out what my prime factorization for 12 plus 8 is. So I write down my factors for 12, and you can do this as a factor tree. So I have 12, which is 3 times 4, and then 4 breaks down into 2 times 2. So my prime factorization for 12 is 2 times 2 times 3. For 8 is 2 times 4, and 4 breaks down into 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 times 2. Then I go ahead and circle the ones that are in common. So I have a 2 in common and another 2 in common. Then I'm left with a 3 and a 2. So the GCF of 12 and 8 is 2 times 2, or 4. Then I write each term as a product of the GCF and its remaining factor. So 12 plus 8, I can factor out a 4. So 4 times 3 gives me the 12, and 4 times 2 gives me 8. So when I factor out, 4 goes on the outside, and the 3 plus 2 remain in the parentheses. Okay, so 12 plus 8, when I rewrite it as a factor, I get 4 times the quantity 3 plus 2. I can do the same thing with 3x plus 15. So 3x I can break down into 3 times x, which are my two factors. 15 I can break down into 3 times 5, so my two factors. I have a 3 in common. They both have a 3. Okay, so I factor that 3 out. I take it out. And I have 3x plus 3 times 5. So I rewrite it as 3 times the quantity x plus 5. Alright, so there are a couple of try-it problems on the next page. I want you to go ahead, pause the video, try out the try-it problems, and when you're done, we'll go over the answers together. Alright, so now that you had a chance to try out the try-it problems, let's go over the answers together. So the first one I have is letter A. So letter A through D, the directions say find each product mentally. Show the steps you used. So the first one I want to use is I want to use the mouse ears for letter A. So for letter A, I'm going to use my mouse ears. So here's my mouse. And I'm going to do 2 and 2/5. So 2 is going to go in one mouse ear, 2/5 is going to go in the other one. So I multiply. 2 times 2 gives me 4. I'm sorry, 5 times 2 gives me 4. Alright, so I want to go ahead and use my mouse ears. 5 times 2, because 5 is on the outside, so 5 times 2 is 10. And then 5 times 2/5, this cancels and I'm left with 2. So 10 plus 2 is 12. For letter B, I want to go ahead and use my mouse ears again. So I have 3 and 1/3. So 3 goes here in my first ear and 1/3. 12 times 3 is 36. And then 12 times 1/3 is 4. 36 plus 4 gives me 40. For letter C, I can use mouse ears. So I have 2.4. I'm going to do 2 and 0.4. So I'm going to do 3 times 2 gives me 6. And then 3 times 0.4 gives me 0.12. So when I add this together, I get 6.12. Letter D, same thing. 6.2, so I have 6 and 0.2. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 0.2 gives me 1. So 30 plus 1 is 31. For letters E, F, G, and H, I want to use the distributive property to rewrite each expression. So I want to use baby for this. So I'm going to take the 8 and I'm going to distribute it to everything that's inside the parentheses. 8 times x is 8x. 8 times 4 is 32. Can't add these together because I have x's and 32. Okay, same thing. 6 times 9 is 54. 6 times x is 6x. For letter G, the 2's on the other side, but I can still distribute it. Same type of thing. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 3 is 6. For h, I have 5 times x, and then 5 times 6, which is 30. For letter I, each day Mr. Martin lifts weights for 12 minutes and runs on the treadmill for 30 minutes. Write 2 equivalent expressions and then find the total of minutes that Mr. Martin exercises in 7 days. So he runs, so my 2 equivalent expressions, right? He goes 12 minutes, he lifts weights, plus 30 minutes, and that's for 7 days. Okay. I can also add these together. 12 plus 30 gives me 42. So same thing. Those are 2 equivalent expressions. 7 times 12 is 84. 30 times 7 is 210. So 210 plus 84 is 294. So he exercises 294 minutes in 7 days. For J through Q, I want to factor each expression. So I want to figure out what I can take out of each one of these. So for 9 and 24, so this is for letter J. 9, I have 3 and 3. 24, okay? They each have a 3 in common, so I can factor out of 3. When I do that, I am left with 3 plus 8. Okay. For letter K, I have 14 and 56, which is 2 and 7. 56, which is 28, is 2 and 14. 2 and 7, they both have a 2 and a 7 in common, so that's 14, so 14 is on the outside. I have 1 plus 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay. For letter, that was for K. For L, I have 80 and 90, so this is 8 times 10, this is 9 times 10, 2 and 5, 2 and 5, 3 and 3, 2 and 4, and 2 and 2. So they have a 2 and a 5 in common. So 10 is what I can factor out. I'm left with 8 plus 9 on the inside. Letter M is 14x and 12. 14 I can factor into 2 times 7 times x. And 12 I can factor into 2 and 6 and 2 and 3. They have a 2 in common. So the 2 factors out, I'm left with 7x plus 6. Again, I can always multiply back through. 2 times 7 gives me the 14x, and 2 times 6 gives me the 12. For n, I have 7x and 21. This breaks down to 7 and x. This is 3 and 7. 7's in common. So I can factor 7 out, and I have x plus 3. For letter O, I have 16 plus 8x. 16 is 2 and 8. 8x is 8 times x. They have an 8 in common. 8 factors out, and I have 2 plus x. For letter P, I have 30 and 36x. 30 is 3 and 10. 36, I can do 6 and 6. Okay, so they both have a 3 and a 2 in common, which is a 6. They both have 6 in common. So I'm left with 6 times quantity 5 plus 6x. For letter Q, I have 150x. Well, this is 10 and 10, and this is 5 and 10 times x. They both have a 10 in common. Okay, but they also both have a 5 in common. So I'm left with 50 on the outside which is 2 plus x. And that is the end of chapter 6, lesson 6.